class lesson here, or three-part lesson. We're going to be talking about see no evil, hear no evil, and then speak no evil. And I've always wanted to do messages on it, and I did like a combination of this message with our youth group, for our men in our youth group, maybe 5 or 6 months ago, and they enjoyed it, and I said, you know what, no, it would actually be better, because there's so much that I wanted to say about each particular one, because I believe that each function has its own purpose, and it's very, very important for each of them. So let's go ahead and dive right on in. So this saying was created by the Japanese culture hundreds of years ago. They called it the 3 wise monkeys. One would hold his hands over his eyes, one would hold his hands over his ears, and one would hold his hands over his mouth, depicting see no evil, hear no evil, and speak no evil. Although this wasn't originally a Christian saying, I believe it applies to us all the same. Number 1, what we see is what gives us our clarity. What we hear is what gives us our direction. And what we speak is what gives us our reality. Today we're going to first dive into see no evil and how it gives us our clarity. Today, I was this morning driving into church. I was running late and the road was closed, and I told my wife, I'm running late, and then I got like 6 or 7 text messages from my team saying they were running late, and I'm like, well, we're all running late, plus I have to preach this morning, and the road's closed down, and I was all freaking out, and then this morning when my team, I kind of told them my frustrations and asked them to pray for me. It was right before we started practice, and it was just kind of like a soothing, calming spirit come over me and say, Corey, you're here, forget about it, focus on me, and so that's what I'm going to do this morning. Now, I'm going to ask you, there are a few parts in here that you're going to have to bear with me. I was a little hesitant on certain parts, so please, I believe that this is something that God gave me that I asked God a couple of times. I was like, man, I was praying about it last night. I'm like, I really don't know if I should say this, but you should see it. I deleted it a couple of times and then re-put it in there a different way and then deleted it and said, no, forget it. The first way was better, and so it was going back and forth, so I appreciate your patience on that. All right. So seeing no evil, it's not just about what we're watching on our phones or what we're watching on TV. It's also about how we view life. It's in how we view people. So it's not always about what we view, but also it's about how we view. We're going to talk about both today. Everybody say, it matters what I view. One more time. It matters what I view. And then everybody say, it matters how I view. You guys are great. I love it. When you hold a mic up here, you hold so much power. It's amazing. It's great. So first we're going to talk about what we view. Why it is so important to be mindful of what we view. Well, because what we view does have an effect on who we become. In a world where we are surrounded all day, every day, by social media, movies, entertainment, and political news, we are constantly being molded into the kind of person we are. Now, the last one was political news, and this is the portion where I said, you know what, maybe I should leave this out, but I'm going to say it, that it does not matter if you watch Fox or CNN. That does not determine your identity to begin with. God determines your identity. The moment we start to go into, oh, well, I watch Fox, so I'm justified, or anybody that watches CNN is a terrible person. No. You're looking through your eyes of your political identity, where we should actually be viewing everybody with our Christian identity first. I am a Christian first and foremost. I am a child of God. I am born again. I do not just say I'm a Republican or I'm a Democrat, and that's how I'm going to treat people. No, I treat people the way that they need to be treated, because of my love for God, and his love shines through me. That is bottom line. You're not justified by watching Fox or CNN. So please, I've seen friendships be destroyed literally on Facebook, arguments, and you've probably seen it before, where people will literally delete people on Facebook because somebody posted an article from CNN or somebody posted an article from Fox, and they just went nuts at each other. And I'm like, guys, you guys go to the same church. You guys are going to have to see each other tomorrow on Sunday. Like, I mean, you better pray down at the altar together, because you guys just are causing all kinds of division for nothing, because they put all of their identity and everything that they care about in what political party they are. It just blows my mind. Now more than ever, we need to be mindful of what we allow our eyes to view. See, your eyesight is the gateway to your mind. What we view with our eyes has no other choice but to be ingested into our mind. Thus, we become a product of things we regularly see. The scary part is that today we have instant access to view anything we want. Unlike ever before, we choose what we get to view on a day-to-day basis. The entire world, good and bad, are at your fingertips every day. See, that's the thing, is there's a lot of bad out there, but there's also a lot of good. And everybody say with me, you choose what you view. Everybody say, you choose what you view. Now, I asked my dad briefly yesterday. I said, hey, we went golfing yesterday morning. I said, Dad, there's a slight portion of my message that I just need your permission on. And I told him a little bit about it, and he's like, oh, go for it, man. So if you're offended, blame him. All right? So he's the one that let me loose. So when I was 19 years old, I worked at a resort called the Scottsdale Plaza Resort. It's probably one of the funnest jobs I've ever had in my life. But my job was, to check people into the hotel, and I was like a bellman and got to drive around in carts. And one day we had a fashion show, and all these celebrities showed up. And I'm walking around, and I'm having to make sure things are ready for this fashion show, drinks and, coolers and all kinds of stuff, food, like putting the food out and all this stuff. And how many know Terry Crews? Terry Crews, big old dude. He's in the movie Longest Yard. He's Hamburger Eddie. He's just that big old dude. He's on, I think, America's Got Talent now, where he's the announcer or whatever, the MC. Amazing guy. So I was walking by him, and he was surrounded by beautiful women, like 20-something-year-olds, just beautiful models from the fashion show. And I'm like, oh man, this guy's probably just the biggest player you've ever met in your life. This dude's tall, muscular, rich. This guy's got it all, right? Funny. And this guy's probably just, going out there and wilding out. But I go next to him, and as I'm just passing by, I hear him talk about his wife. And he says, yes, I've been married to my wife for 17 years now, and now it's over 20 years, but 17 years now. We have 5 beautiful children. And he was, in that moment, was setting the precedent of, hey, I'm married, I have kids. And it hit me. I was like, wow. This dude has all these women around him, and he said, you know what? I'm not messing with it, because I have a beautiful wife at home that I love very much. And just kind of making sure that they had in their mind, this ain't going anywhere, So then I met him afterwards. I shook his hand and just said, hey, it was awesome to meet you. I didn't really bring that up because, it would have been awkward. Hey, man, it was really cool that you mentioned your wife. Didn't mention that, but got to shake his hand. And he was an amazing guy, but it kind of pushed me to do a little bit more research on him. And, I started reading interviews with him and kind of where he came from, because I just wanted to know how this guy thought and why he thought how he thought. So Terry Crews, I didn't know this, but Terry came from a broken home with a very abusive father. In one interview, he tells a story that he saw his father one time literally knock out his mom when he was a small child. And I was amazed at how he turned out. I'm like, how did he turn out this great? And what's funny is Terry, I didn't realize this, but he struggled with, wait for it, pornography. He said in an interview one time, if you wait long enough to deal with this issue when you're young, it can then and will destroy your marriage. It will destroy your marriage. He continued to say in the interview, some people say, hey, man, you can't really be addicted to that. But I'm going to tell you something, he says. If a day turns into night and you're still watching, you have a problem. It changes the way you think about people. People become objects. People become body parts. They become things to be used rather than people to be loved. Cruz said it kept his habit for so long that it was so hard to take it that he literally had to go to rehab to actually overcome it. He's been married to his wife since 1990, and now he is over it, and he's over his addiction, and he's moved on. But what blows me away is how many people actually deal with this. That the church, anytime you even mention the word, people are like that's kind of an offensive word. You know, it's one of those things where it really strikes a lot of people because how many people it affects and how many people struggle with it. See, in Matthew 5:29, and if thy right eye offend thee, pluck it out and cast it from thee. For it is profitable for thee that one of thy members should perish, and not that thy whole body should be cast into hell. The Bible is saying that if your eyes are the driving force behind your flesh, then it's better to be blind than to lose your soul. Now, I don't think you should pluck out your eyes, but I am saying, is your addiction worth your soul? So keep in mind, guys, that one more time, say it out loud, it matters what I view. Perfect. Again, guys, this goes to so many levels on what I'm actually viewing in my eyes. Because, again, what you constantly watch, you will become a product of. What you constantly think of and digest through your mind and say and just really think on these things, you will then become that product. Next, we are going to talk about how I view. And this is, again, the one that I spent the most time on because I believe that it changes how we view people. It's something that I struggled with growing up in church, and we'll get to that a little bit later, but it's something that I had to overcome. Let's first deal with your situations. The Bible says in 2 Corinthians 5:7, for we walk by faith and not by sight. It also says in Hebrews 11:1, now faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. I believe that as a church we need to reevaluate how we are viewing our situations. It's all on perception. Your victory is as close as your perception. I believe a lot of times we let what we see in our situation dictate our faith, when it should be our faith that dictates what we see in our situation. In the middle of our storm, we lose our faith in God because it's easier to trust what we see rather than have faith in something that was promised. You see that seeing is happening right now. Seeing something, it means it's happening right now, whereas faith believes in something to come. The Bible says that greater is he that is in me than he that is in the world. No weapon that is formed against thee shall prosper. So it's no question if God can, but it's a question of how do I view my situation. See, you can look at your test and look at it as just a test, or you can look at it as a future testimony. I know it's cliche to say, but there is no testimony without the test. There's no victory without the battle. There are things you're going to go through in life that are horrific. You're just going to go through it because it is life. But us as Christians, a lot of times we forget that we need to be looking through God's eyes and not our own. That's why the Bible says we walk by faith and not by sight. Because if you use your sight, you'll have no faith. You'll view a situation and call it for what it is as opposed to calling it for what it can be and what God actually has promised it will be. See, it's living from second to second as opposed to promise to promise. You know, if God promised me something, I know what's going to happen, whether it's going to happen today, tomorrow, or next year. I have faith because I'm looking at my situation not by my eyes, but by my faith. My faith determines what I see. not my eyes. Now, this is the big one, is how we view people. I know for a fact that the reason why this church is growing so fast, and how many are excited about what's happening at POP? It's incredible. I love what I feel. I've been going to this church since I was 0 years old. I was born, I think, on a Tuesday and in church on Sunday. My mom did not rest. She said, let's go to church. My kid needs Jesus. And when my dad said a couple weeks ago that there was only like maybe 6 times that my mom missed church for like the last 30 years, he is not even kidding. Like, that woman, she could be on her deathbed and she's like, does this thing have wheels? Let's go to church. Get me in the car. Let's go to church. And she did the same thing with us kids, man. She taught us the importance of being in church. And I again, just to plug this in, if you are not coming on Wednesdays, please try to be here on Wednesdays. I know my dad would appreciate that plug, but please come Wednesdays, because I promise you, it is good word. There's nothing like bad word. It's always good. Again, when my dad preaches or when any of his ministers preach, it's always a good word. So please try to be here Wednesdays. But going back to how we view people, this is something that I struggled with growing up. See, this is, as the church, we need to see the potential in someone and not just look at their faults. As the church, we're called to do that. You know, we a lot of times, if we're seeing our members through our sights instead of our faith, we then judge them. We see all of their faults. See, one thing I've learned is when you look for someone's faults, you will always find them. We're human. We all have faults. We all have sinned. We've all come short of the glory of God. If you spend a lot of time just looking for faults, I promise you, you're going to find them. If you're determined, you're going to find them. Have you ever been around somebody that, and I know none of you are like this, but have you ever been around somebody that just looks for something to criticize? Like, just looks for the church did a buffet, but they didn't have the right, mac and cheese that I want, and it was lukewarm. So this is terrible. This is a terrible experience here. Or I've had this happen to me legitimately, where I'll do like a group text, and I'll, honest to God, forget somebody, and then somebody, why wasn't I on the group text? I'm like, well, I forgot. I'm sorry. I am a scatterbrain, and I can't remember every person that I was going to invite. And I apologize. Didn't mean anything by it, but totally forgot. But them looking at the situation instead of having faith of my intentions says it all. You know, they looked at a situation and said, I'm not part of this, instead of having faith in who I am and my integrity and my love for them. And they judge it based on what they see as opposed to what they believe that I am. You see what I mean? Like, it's, again, this is why we walk by faith and not by sight. Because when you look at somebody with your eyes, instead of the faith of what they can be, you do not see potential. You see faults. Thank you. My iPad didn't keep open here. See, this is a big reason why we have lost our faith in people. We are viewing people through the eyes of sight rather than viewing them through the eyes of faith. When you look at people through eyes of sight, you can't have any faith that they will ever change. The most unforgiving people in this world are the people who walk by sight and not by faith. I'm going to tell you right now that if you're holding a grudge against somebody, I don't care who it is. It could be a fellow brother in the church. It could be a fellow sister in the church. If you're holding that grudge, the people that hold on to grudges are the people that don't see the potential. They don't care about the potential. They see you how a person is right now instead of who they can be transformed by God. That's no way to live as a Christian. That's not a Christian in my book. I thank God that he doesn't look at my faults and say, I've given you too many chances. Or I'm gonna judge you on what you are right now. See, that's the thing, is the Bible says he died for us when we were sinners. He knew my faults. He knew my problems. And he says, I care about you because I know your potential. I have a calling for your life, and your potential goes beyond your faults. Your potential goes beyond your stumbling blocks right now. And I'm going to love you past all of that. See, us as Christians, we need to carry that heart. When somebody comes into the church, we can't look at them and say, I see all that's wrong with him. This person's got to, know that the hair's not done. It looks like trash. This girl's got, God knows what on. I'm going to look at her and judge her. No. You're not seeing the potential. You're not seeing that God actually died for her and him too. See, he didn't just die for the people that believed in his name. No. He died for every single person walking on this earth. And it's our job to see the potential like God sees. See, it's scary when the devil sees potential, but the church doesn't. Why do you think the devil is so against the church and destroying people? Because he can see the potential. But then why do you think the church is so lax on growing people and spending time with people? Because we can't see potential. It's, again, how are you viewing people? Are they just objects? Are they just, I don't care about them. They mean nothing to me. Are they I care about getting my family to heaven, and that's it. It stops in my family, and if I've got my family to heaven, I've done my job. No, it goes beyond that. Every person that you come into contact with, there's potential there. There's a calling there. There's an undiscovered calling, and we need to help them find it. We can't be so wrapped up into, as long as everybody looks the same at our church, everybody talks the same, everybody acts the same, those are the people that we're going to accept. Those are the people that we're going to believe in. As a child, just a brief moment here of total transparency. Growing up in church, I struggled a lot with this. And being completely honest, it was a thing that I dealt with for years. See, when you grow up in church, you see a lot of people. You see a lot of people come in and leave. Come and go, come and go, come and go. And I was struggling with somebody that came to our church, and they'd come down to the altar. They'd cry their eyes out. They'd speak in tongues. They'd run the aisles. They would be here for a couple of months, and then they would leave. And then a couple months later, God convicted them and got them back in church. And they'd come back, speak in tongues, do the same thing. And I got to watching them. And I'm like, man, they're not sincere. They're just a person that comes in here for a quick fix and then walks out the door. Whether that might have been true or not, God talked to me. He said, Corey, how many times have you messed up? How many times have you come to church with a bad heart, with sin in your life? And my mercy and my grace is still waiting for you. See, that's the thing, is I struggled because I was tired of being right so many times. And the devil used that. He'd tell me, Corey, you know that person's not going to make it. You know that person's going to walk away. And then when they did, it only strengthened the way that I looked at people. See, there's some times where people will disappoint you in life. They're going to treat you bad. They're going to talk about you. They're going to do stuff that you knew was coming and you called it. I could tell you 5 months ago that was going to happen. You better check your spirit, because you're looking at their faults and not their potential. Please, if you learn anything today, it's not just about what you view, but how you view. See, we always have to watch the content, but we never look at the perception or the way that we're looking at something. Are we looking at it through God's eyes, or are we looking at it through our eyes? See, our eyes are carnal. Our eyes want to be judgmental and pointing fingers and say, you're not living right, you're living wrong, and I'm justified, and I watch Fox News or I watch CNN, so that makes me justified. None of that matters, guys. What matters is how are you treating people? How are you loving people? Are you seeing their potential more than their faults? Because again, God, He knows their faults, but His grace and His mercy is sufficient still for them. His strength is made perfect in their weakness. So please, guys, if you're having an issue forgiving somebody, think about your view. How are you viewing that person? You can say, oh, they mean nothing to me. Well, they mean something to God, so they mean something to you. You don't have God's heart if you don't love people. You don't have God's heart if you don't forgive people. You don't have God's heart if you don't have mercy for people. You don't. You have your heart. You have your sight. You're looking through the eyes of sight as opposed to looking through the eyes of faith. Thank you so much for your time this morning. Next week, we are going to be talking about hear no evil and how hearing is what gives you your direction. What you hear will decide, and what you listen to will decide on what direction you will start. Let's all stand. So we're going to take, you have a couple of minutes free here, about 3 minutes free before. So go enjoy coffee. Come back today at 11 o'clock. Who's going to be here to worship at 11 o'clock? All right. Love you guys. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you.